one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought.
Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of 2 different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in lifetime.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice and FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections. Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file, and I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
As to the first, it's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie just completely blew the doors off a tense House Judiciary Committee hearing, sending absolute shockwaves through Washington as he directly targeted the highly protected contents of the FBI's internal Jeffrey Epstein investigative files. Massie did not use vague political talking points. Instead, he brought direct receipts, completely cornering FBI Director Kash Patel over the existence of highly sensitive FD 302 documents that are currently sitting in federal possession. The raw exchange completely unmasked the legal gymnastics surrounding the case, with Massie exposing an elite, high-profile list of at least 20 distinct individuals whom victims explicitly named under cooperation agreements, individuals who allegedly had victims, including minors like Virginia Roberts, trafficked directly to them by Epstein. Massie systematically went down the line, detailing a staggering network of figures buried within the FBI's records. The former CEO of Barclays Bank, Jess Staley, a prominent Hollywood producer worth hundreds of millions of dollars, a royal prince, an Italian car company owner, a legendary rock star, a world-famous magician, a high-profile government official, an influential former politician, and at least 6 global billionaires. When pressed on why the FBI has consistently claimed there is no credible evidence of secondary trafficking, Patel hid behind the legal defense of prior administrations, claiming that 2 separate United States attorneys' offices across 3 different administrations reviewed the exact same lifetime materials and determined they did not rise to the level of probable cause for fresh criminal indictments. However, Massie completely exposed the structural flaws in this defense, proving that while past non-prosecution agreements may have hamstrung investigations within the Southern District of Florida, those territorial constraints completely evaporated under the Southern District of New York's 2019 sex trafficking indictment. The real-world fallout surrounding this specific hearing is massive, unfolding alongside the highly turbulent execution of the federal Epstein Files Transparency Act, following a series of delayed and heavily criticized drops by the Department of Justice, which ultimately resulted in the publication of millions of pages of internal records. The government has faced severe, widespread condemnation. Massie explicitly pointed out that the rush to push these files through to the Oversight Committee resulted in severe redaction failures, accidentally leaking the sensitive private names of surviving victims who are now furious with the Bureau's handling of the files. Furthermore, while Patel testified that the FBI will look into new investigative leads, the Bureau is facing intense institutional pressure over its persistent refusal to act on the concrete descriptions already detailed inside their own historical 302 forms. This intense standoff has completely laid bare a fundamental crisis of trust within the American justice system, proving to the public that despite massive waves of forced document releases, the battle over institutional privilege, elite accountability, and who the federal government is truly protecting remains at an all-time high. Thomas Massie's aggressive interrogation successfully pulled the curtain back on the highest levels of the deep state, ensuring that the demand for absolute transparency over the Epstein trafficking network cannot be brushed under the rug.